caught my fiancée kissing with another man in our living room, packed my bags, and chose myself. Heartbreak sucks, but self-respect wins. It all started with a text, just one text. I was sitting on the couch, the glow of the TV flickering in the dimly lit living room. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Absent-mindedly, I picked it up, expecting a spam message or maybe a notification from a group chat. But it wasn't either of those. It was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Do you think she find out? My heart stopped for a moment, then resumed with a heavy thud. It was clearly sent to the wrong person, or at least that's what I told myself. I glanced toward the kitchen, where Emma was humming softly to herself, preparing the dinner she always promised to make on Sundays. My Emma, the love of my life, my fiancée. I stared at the message, my pulse quickening. 1,000 possibilities flitted through my mind, but I couldn't bring myself to type a response. I locked my phone and tossed it back onto the table, as if the device itself burned my skin. I told myself to forget it, but that was easier said than done. The next day, something else happened. Emma left her phone on the counter when she went upstairs to grab a sweater. It wasn't like me to snoop. I prided myself on being trustworthy. But that text from the night before had planted a seed of doubt in my mind, and doubt can be relentless. I picked up her phone and stared at the lock screen. Just one quick glance at her recent messages. I told myself, that's all I needed. But her phone was locked, and I didn't know the passcode. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. Was I really doing this? Was I really that guy? Before I could think too much about it, I heard her footsteps on the stairs. I put her phone back exactly as I found it, then quickly busied myself by flipping through the mail. She entered the room with a smile, the kind of smile that could make me forget about everything wrong in the world. But not this, not the nagging suspicion gnawing at me. The real cracks started to show 2 weeks later. Emma's behavior changed, subtle things at first. She started taking longer showers, spending more time on her phone, and staying late at work for meetings. I tried to brush it off, but the gnawing doubt was turning into full-blown paranoia. It all came to a head one Friday night. She was out with her friends, or at least that's what she'd said. I stayed home, nursing a beer and the growing weight in my chest. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed answers. I remembered the Find My app. We'd set it up ages ago, when Emma had lost her phone during a weekend hike. I opened it and hesitated. This was crossing a line, wasn't it? But the thought of not knowing was worse than the guilt of invading her privacy. I tapped her name, and her location popped up on the map. It wasn't a bar or a restaurant. It was a residential address across town. My stomach twisted. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and car keys. I had to know. The house was quiet when I arrived, the kind of quiet that feels wrong. I parked down the street and walked up to the front door. Through the window, I could see dim lights and hear faint laughter. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorbell, and then I saw her. She wasn't with her friends. She wasn't alone. She was in the arms of someone else, a man I didn't recognize. The sight of them laughing, their bodies so close, hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All the air had been sucked out of my lungs, leaving me frozen in place. I don't know how long I stood there before I turned and walked away. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them making any sense. When I got home, I didn't confront her, not immediately. Instead, I sat in the dark, replaying every moment of our relationship in my head, trying to figure out where things had gone wrong. Had I missed the signs? Had I done something to drive her away? When she came home later that night, she looked at me with that same smile, the smile I'd fallen in love with. But now, it felt like a weapon, a lie wrapped in beauty. I didn't say anything as she kissed my cheek and asked how my night had been. I just nodded and muttered something about being tired. The truth could wait. For now, I needed to figure out what I was going to do. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying what I had seen. Emma lay beside me, her breathing soft and even, like nothing was wrong. It made my stomach churn. The bed, once a place of comfort, now felt like a battleground. Morning came, and with it, clarity. I couldn't let this fester. The truth had to come out, but I needed more than just my gut feeling and what I'd seen through the window. If I confronted her and she denied it, what would I say? I needed proof. The following week, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started checking her phone when she was in the shower. I scoured her texts, her emails, even her search history. She was careful, though, too careful. I started noticing little things, a receipt in her purse for a restaurant we hadn't been to, a faint trace of cologne on her jacket that wasn't mine, and the phone calls always quick, always when she thought I wasn't paying attention. One night, I followed her. She said she had a late meeting at work, but I knew better. My heart pounded as I tailed her car through the city. I kept a safe distance, trying not to draw attention. She didn't go to her office. She went to the same house as before. This time, I parked closer. I waited in the shadows, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. After an hour, I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped out of the car and walked up to the house. The door was slightly ajar, as if mocking me, daring me to step inside. I pushed it open. The scene before me was painfully familiar. Emma in his arms, their laughter filling the room. This time, though, I didn't stand there frozen. "Emma," I said, my voice shaking. They both turned toward me. Her eyes widened in shock, and his face twisted into something between confusion and guilt. "Nick," she started, but I held up a hand to stop her. "Don't," I said, my voice steadier now. "Don't you dare try to explain this." The man, whoever he was, stood up, holding his hands out like he was calming a wild animal. "Look, man, I didn't know," I cut him off. "You didn't know she was engaged, that she has someone waiting for her at home every night." I turned back to Emma. "Is this your work meeting? Is this what you've been doing behind my back?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not this time. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said, her voice trembling. It just did." I let out a bitter laugh. "That's the best you've got. It just happened. You don't trip and fall into an affair, Emma. You made a choice. Every time you lied to me, every time you left the house to see him, you chose this." She reached out to me, but I stepped back. I couldn't let her touch me, not now. "I loved you," I said, my voice breaking. "I trusted you. I was going to marry you." Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't care. I turned and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind me. The drive home was a blur. My chest felt hollow, my mind a storm of anger, sadness, and betrayal. By the time I got back to our apartment, I knew what I had to do. I grabbed a suitcase and started packing. Every item I threw in felt like a piece of my heart breaking all over again. I didn't want to be here when she came home. I couldn't face her, not after what I'd seen. By the time she arrived, I was at the door with my suitcase in hand. Her face crumpled when she saw me. "Please, Nick, don't do this," she begged. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't the woman I thought I knew. "You already did this," I said quietly, and then I left. It's been 3 months since that night. I moved into a small apartment across town. It's not much, but it's mine. The silence is heavy sometimes, but it's better than living a lie. Emma tried to call and text in the beginning, but I blocked her number. There's nothing left to say. I still think about her sometimes, about what we had and what could have been. But those thoughts are fewer and farther between now. Betrayal changes you. It leaves scars, but it also teaches you. It taught me that love isn't enough without trust. And it taught me that sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. If you liked the video, please leave a like, comment and subscribe for more videos like this in the future.